Hello, Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's English lesson. Now, in our English lesson yesterday, we planned our letter, didn't we, from Florence Nightingale to her family back home. So we looked at the different sections of our letter because we had four, didn't we? We had the introduction, then we had paragraph 1 where we talk about what Florence Nightingale saw when she first arrived. Then we have paragraph 2 about what she changed. And then finally, we had the conclusion. And we decided which expanded noun phrases, which exclamation sentences, and which questions, for example, that we wanted to include in each section of our letter. Well, today we are going to start writing this letter, and we're going to be writing our introduction. Now, before we start writing our letter, I think it's important to refresh our memories on the different features that are included in an informal letter and in which order they come in, because we're going to need to know this when we write our letter, aren't we? So here's your retrieval activity for today. You have an informal letter from Howard to his aunties. Now, what I'd like you to do, you have this on your worksheet, Year 2 English, 9th of February resource, and I would like you to either highlight and label or just label the different features that you see in this letter. Can you remember the order? Okay, so pause the video now and have a go at labelling the different features. Okay, Year 2, so let's go through them together. Well, what's the first feature that we have in an informal letter? Well, can you see it in the right-hand corner at the top? What was that called again? Yes, that was the address, wasn't it? Now, was it the sender's address or was it the person who's receiving the letter's address? Yes, that's right, it's the sender's address, isn't it? Because the person who's receiving the letter, their address is going to be on the envelope, isn't it? At the front, so the postman knows where to take the letter. So therefore, that is our first feature, the sender's address. And that is found in the top right-hand corner of our letter. Now, what comes underneath the address? Well, yes, can you see it? It's the date, isn't it? So that tells us when the letter was written. And you always find this underneath the sender's address in your informal letter. Okay, so we've got the address and we've got the date. What comes next? Wow, can you see it says Dear Aunties, and that is called our opening. So that is telling us who he is writing to. He's writing to his aunties, isn't he? Okay, so now we know who he is writing to. What is the first paragraph of our informal letter? What is it called? Yes, look, can you see it here? Our first paragraph. And that is called our introduction. And our first sentence in our introduction tells us the purpose of our letter, so why we are writing the letter. So in this letter, Howard has written, I'm writing to you to let you know how I'm getting on in Egypt. So he's writing to his aunties to let them know how he was getting on in Egypt. And he's told us the purpose of his letter in the very first sentence. Okay, now what comes after? Well, in our letter, remember, we have paragraph 1 and 2. So we've only got 2 more extra paragraphs after the introduction to add some information. But in this letter, Howard has got 3 extra paragraphs to tell his aunties all about his time in Egypt. Now, after we've written the extra paragraphs, what comes at the end? Oh yes, can you see it? The last paragraph. Well, the first paragraph was called an introduction. What was the last paragraph called? Fantastic, yes, it's called a conclusion, and it tells the person the very last things that you want to say to them in your letter before you end your letter. So in this letter, Howard has written, I'm looking forward to hearing back to you, and I'll write again when I've got some more news. So that's the last thing that he wants to say to his aunties in this letter. And then finally, we have got Love Howard with a kiss. Now, what's this called? Yes, this is called a sign-off. We looked at these when we looked at the features, and we also looked at these for diary entries. And he's written Love Howard with a kiss. Now, remember, we would only write love with a kiss if we were writing an informal letter, because we know the person that we're writing to well. So Howard knows his aunties very well because they are in his family. Okay, so brilliant. Well done if you remembered all of those features, because I know we covered them a few weeks ago But as I said, it's a good idea to refresh your memory just before we write our letter. So let's have a look at the first few features in the letter. Well, we started with the address, didn't we? Now let's have a look at the different parts of the address so we can write our own then. Well, the first part of the address says Winter Palace Hotel. Now, what does this tell us? Well, this tells us where he is staying, the place he is staying. So he is staying in a hotel called the Winter Palace Hotel. Okay, then next, he's got Cairo. Now, you might not know what this is, but if you do, that's brilliant. Cairo is a city, just like Birmingham's a city and London's a city. Okay, then finally, we have Egypt. Now, what is Egypt? Is Egypt a city? No, it's not, is it? It's a country. So he is included in his address the place he is staying, which is the hotel, the city he's in, which is Cairo, and then the country he's in, which is Egypt. Okay, so he has included those three things in his letter. Now, if Winter Palace Hotel was in Birmingham, you would write Winter Palace Hotel. Then for the city, you'd write Birmingham. And then for the country, you'd write United Kingdom or England. Okay, so now that you know what is included in an address, well, in the address in our informal letter, you can try and use this address to help you write Florence Nightingale's address. Now, where is she staying? Well, she's definitely not staying in a hotel, is she? So think about where she's staying. What city is she? Begins with an S, can you remember? And then what country is she in? Okay, so could you pause the video now? And in the top right-hand corner of your piece of paper, can you write Florence Nightingale's address? Okay, Yeti, have you written Florence Nightingale's address? Fantastic, well done. So let's move on to the next feature in our letter. Well, can you see it says 22nd of October, 1922. So here's the date. 22nd of October 1922. So this is the day that Howard wrote his letter. Now, our letter isn't going to have the same address on, is it? Well, let's just go through the different parts of the date and then you can write your own. So we've got the 22nd. Now, the 22nd tells us the date, the number in that specific month, the number of the day in that month. So, for example, you could have the 5th of November, the 10th of September, the 22nd of October. So yes, that is the date, the specific day, the number in the month. Okay, and then you have the month. So in this case, it's October. And then you have the year, which is 1922 in this case, but it's not going to be the same year in our letter. Now remember, Florence Nightingale arrived in Scutari on the 3rd of November, 1854. So she's not going to be writing her letter on that day, is she? But you could do it later on in November, or you could do it at the start of December, for example. It is up to you the date that your letter is going to be written, as long as it's after the 3rd of November, 1854. Okay, so pause the video now and write your date underneath your address. Okay, year 2. So now we're going to move on to our introduction. Well, last lesson, we planned our introduction, didn't we? We wrote a simple sentence telling us the purpose. Then we chose different adverbs of time, questions, exclamation sentences, conjunctions, expanded noun phrases, and past progressive sentences that we wanted to use in our very own introduction. Now, if you haven't already, please could you pause the video and go and find your plan for your introduction. Okay, so we are going to have a look how we can change our introduction plan into our introduction in our